Good morning, everyone. Today, I'd like to share with you the refreshed appraisal and staff development process that we're putting in place for the coming academic year and beyond. The first thing I'd like to do is, as I mentioned this morning, I would really like to thank all of the colleagues who have contributed to this policy and process, formally through meetings, discussions, feedback, and informally in the course of chatting in the ACR or over lunch. You may not realise it, but your influence, your ideas, and your concerns have shaped this piece of work. So this morning I'll be looking at the overarching policy, the different elements that make up the process of appraisal and development. And just to clarify that, I think the key to effective and purposeful appraisal processes is the self-review and the focus on teacher agency. We do need clear evidence to support the appraisal process so that it's measured and so that your work is fully acknowledged. This isn't about measuring what you're doing. It's about making sure that we in SMT, that your line managers understand how much you contribute, not just in one area of the school, but to the whole school community. I want to talk a little about our next steps as we build on this to develop a culture of coaching and support. I think we do this really effectively for pupils, but perhaps we forget that we could benefit from this approach ourselves. So, the policy. Following your work in the ACR meeting at the beginning of the year, my goodness, how long ago that seems now, the appraisal process is firmly grounded in our aim to support our teaching and learning and is based on the teacher standards. It's a cyclical process. It's live, it's continuous, and it's fundamentally driven by the person being appraised. It is informed by the idea that while teachers can be great at developing reflection and growth in their own subjects, we are not always so supportive to ourselves. And I particularly appreciated feedback I had at one HODS meeting before half term, where Tom in geography expressed very clearly the concept of appraisal as a launch pad, a starting point for constructive discussions about where we are going as a school, where a department is going, and how each individual within that department contributes to both of those areas within the school. So the self-review process, that's what I'm hoping you will be able to achieve over the next day or the next couple of days, quite early on at this stage, although in normal time I'm hoping for this to run as a November to November experience. The self-review is on Firefly both as a form and as a Word document, and I'll be showing that to you later. You can download it and complete it, or you can complete it on Firefly, and if you submit it, you need to tick the little box which says you want to receive a copy, and then you can forward that to your head of department or your line manager. The self-review is for us to identify our personal goals and to explore how these align with wider practice, with the school as a whole, and for us to take a holistic view of our contribution to the community. It's the place to work out where we are and where we would like to be and how we might map our pathway to get to where we would like to be. So it's essentially a real reflective tool. It's not written in stone. If you feel that there are things that don't quite work for you or things that I've left out, then this is an opportunity for us to adjust it and to amend it, because it's a Firefly document and it's easily changeable. Observations are part of the evidence base for this, and I'll talk a little bit more about those shortly. I mention them here because the self-review is a time to explore how it will work best for you, and to bear in mind that this could include acting as an observer as well as inviting others into your classroom. So it's that idea of the open door. It works in both directions. Now, the role of the line manager, the appraiser, and the teacher, the individual. First of all, I really tried to make sure that there were clear roles and clear responsibilities for each party. My feeling is that the process should very much be driven by the individual teacher, but the appraiser is asked to keep the process on track within the cycle and to ensure that the appraisal process is shared and acted on. Line managers should be ready to share the outcomes of appraisals, such as training needs, partnerships and collaboration, projects and initiatives that have arisen from the appraisal process. An example would be, I know that at one of the INSETs earlier this year, I heard all about a collaboration that I had no idea about between the music department and the IT department. They'd been working together on a series of projects, and it was really exciting and interesting work. HODs should be sharing the outcomes with each other and in their departmental reviews, and also just in a short and informal email to say to me, oh, by the way, have you seen Thea and Sandra are working on this? Amazing work is going on here. Please make sure, appraisers, that you are sharing that amazing work. So the timeline here, autumn 2 is essentially after half term. Spring 1 is before half term, spring 2 after half term of those particular terms. So essentially, by the beginning of November, straight after half term, a teacher should have completed the self-review and set their initial objectives. We're starting the process of self-review and reflection now, early, partly because we've missed an entire appraisal cycle pretty much, but also to give ourselves time to prepare for the cycle to start in earnest in the second half of the autumn term. I thought because it's a new system, we need a little bit more time of reflection. And as I said, if we need to adapt any of the forms or the processes or the procedures, this is the time where we can adjust those before it officially goes live in November. I'm hoping that an annual cycle where line managers have an opportunity to meet termly with colleagues will allow for a more meaningful process than the quite hurried Easter term version. And it's intended that this will allow colleagues to undertake observations that might cover more than one year group, it might cover more than one teaching approach, and it would certainly cover more than a single lesson in the course of the year. So we've got the self-review, setting the initial objectives, discussing those with your line manager, agreeing them, deciding on your observation focus, creating your individual timeline. I want this done in January or February. This is what I'll be doing. This is why I'm doing it. The observation cycle begins at the beginning of the spring term, and it can run through the entire term. There should be some form of debriefing, regular meeting in the spring, second half of the spring term, and then feedback from training or coaching. I know that it's very, very easy for us to go on an amazing course, to come back to school, and then we get immediately sucked back into all of the old patterns and the ways that we've done things. If we're looking at training that has been really valuable, then I think it's worth teachers discussing with line managers, how am I going to share this? Could I, for example, do a Loom, which other colleagues can access on Firefly? Could I do a Saturday morning INSET? Could I participate at the next whole school INSET? How are we going to share and cascade, as they say, that experience? The observation cycle can conclude by the end of the summer term. The teacher completes findings and sets up the next self-review. But the key thing is that before then, we're looking at that cycle of training and development and evaluation of goals and achievements. At the beginning of the next cycle, the line manager approves the findings and then you discuss the new objectives for the coming year. The evidence tracking. There are many ways in which we can deploy data or documentation that you already gather, use, prepare. So this is not intended to be an added layer of work. It's about using what you've got already. And on Firefly, I found a very handy document, I think from a University of Worcester PGCE course, which has a whole raft of different types of evidence to support different teaching standards. So that's there on Firefly. As we move towards this process, it's for the teacher to decide how they will maintain and share their portfolio, which is a growing body of work that supports their goals and objectives and kind of tracks your career progression and your personal teaching development across not just 1 year, but a cycle of years. It could be an electronic, it could be hard copy, it could be a Google Doc, it could be a personal folder. However you decide, it's there, and it should be easily maintained and easily deliverable to a line manager or other superior. The forms and the reference documents should also be ready for you to access. In regard to goal setting, the personal, professional, departmental and whole school goals may be different, but in some way it would be really nice to see some kind of alignment, but that should be decided by the teacher. The appraiser is there to encourage, to support and to help that process of alignment, and also it should be said that there could be short-term goals. It could be something like supporting an NQT to deliver their first school trip, even if that's just getting in a mini bus and driving down to Portsmouth to do a viewing of the Victory or something of that nature, or whether it's a major project such as a postgraduate degree of some sort. So appraisers are there to support, to advise, to align. Again, the goal setting really should be driven by the teacher. Back to the whole concept of observation. Observation is a cycle. It's critical to this. It should be driven by the individual, and teachers and line managers should be ready to adapt to a range of different types of observation. I would really like to see a move away from the single lesson observation per year. It would be much better to have that opportunity to look at the fact that the observations vary depending on the cohort you're teaching, depending on different methodologies used by different departments. A focus perhaps might be, this is my subject knowledge, is it rich enough, is it deep enough, how am I conveying it effectively? Another focus might be, look, I'm teaching them how to use apostrophes correctly. So those are very different things that you are teaching, and they'll take very different teaching approaches. So I think the key thing is, what am I seeking to observe and why? How is it going to support pupils' learning? And then to work out the best logistics behind how am I going to log that development in the teacher, in my teaching and pupil learning. We are building our way towards a culture of mutual coaching and encouragement, and the appraisal process is intended to feed into this. We're looking at different ways of developing this coaching culture. Again, as with the nature of appraisal and professional development, the key thing here is that it's a live, ongoing and sustained process. It should be supportive of a specific aspect of practice, and that's why those kind of different forms of observation are so key. It should embed new knowledge and skills into day-to-day practice. This is what we want to try to do as a department. This is the impact we believe it will have. Let's log and let's see how that happens. It's about enhancing our teaching repertoire, our range of techniques to make those students remain focused and engaged and happy in our lessons. It's about supporting experimentation. Let's try this. It might not work, but let's see. Let's give it a go. It's both departmental and cross-departmental. A coach does not need to be a line manager. And again, teachers should not be afraid to nominate a coach or a colleague with whom they'd like to work to develop their teaching practice. Overall, this is aimed at the fundamental that I would really like to embed in every department, for every year group, for every teacher. It's fostering that culture of excellence based on good habits, good learning habits, good teaching habits, strong aspirations, high expectations, where all of us model to our students the strategies and approaches that will help them become effective, ambitious, and enthusiastic learners. I'd just like to briefly share with you the Firefly area where the documents I've mentioned are available. I'm going to switch sharing. Please do use the chat area for comments and questions, and then once I've shown you the Firefly area, we'll be able to have that Q&A process. So I will see you shortly, and thank you very much, and I hope that this has been useful. I've used it as a loom. I've created this as a loom so that you can actually go through the PowerPoint in slower time at your own speed, and have a reflection on some of the things that I've said, if that helps you. Thank you very much for listening. Take care.